We will start off. Thank you. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the What Schools Must Do to Retain Black Educators webinar. My name is Jaleesa Evans, the founder and CEO of the Black Educator Advocates Network. We are an organization committed to transforming the environment, practices, and policies impacting the educational experience for Black educators. Over the past 2 years, we have been committed to taking collective action against policies impeding on the Black educator pipeline. We are grateful to be able to present to you all our findings after completing the California Black Educator Survey. Just housekeeping, we will drop the report in the chat for you all so that you all can reference throughout today's presentation. And I will give some background on our findings and share what today's agenda will be. So in fall of 2023, our team of Black educators created a survey to hear directly from other Black educators across the state. We published our findings in a brief report titled What Schools Must Do to Retain Black Educators. Today, we will hear from Black educators through their own testimonies, dive deeper into the findings illustrated in the report, and hear from our partners to discuss the next steps for decision makers in educational policy. We will end our time sharing recommendations and with a call to action of commitment from organizations, school leaders, and districts who are joining us today. So I would first like to ground our webinar in the voices and the experiences of the Black educators who began with us and decided to start our survey back in 2023. So I will play a video of voices from 3 Black women educators who will share their experience in the classroom. We just need sound.
My name is Carla Banks. I am a high school PE teacher. I taught at Hamilton High School in Los Angeles, California.
Hi, I'm Ebony. I've been teaching in California for 9 years, and I teach in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name is Melitha, and I have been an educator for 24 years in Los Angeles and Compton.
I chose to become an educator because I believe in being a change agent in my community, finding ways to bridge gaps within low-income areas through experiences that may not often be given to students, and then helping students navigate through the challenges they may face in life as well as in academics.
I know growing up, I've always wanted to work with kids. I didn't know if I wanted to work with them in education or if I wanted to work with them in like a group home setting or in the juvenile setting. Just because of my background and the family members that I grew up with, I felt like they didn't have that guidance of someone really helping support them to lead them in the right direction. So I just kind of wanted to be that person for people like me and coming from the community that I came from.
In a perfect world, I think what I would change about my experience is being able to have a safe space for Black educators to come together without the negative connotation that is centered around when Black people get together and fellowship with each other.
Having to approach admin and make sure that I'm heard is something that I believe I had to face, and I would say it's something that I will continually face because it's something that's in our system. So it's something that needs to be changed, and also it's something that I believe I had to work through. Having the tools and the resources to be able to go to admin and speak with them and not be viewed as the angry Black woman or viewed as hostile is something that I kept in mind and had to face.
Change is coming in LA, giving Black educators specifically support from beginning, give me a mentor, give me someone who's going to help me, not just the first couple of months, but give me a mentor for a couple of years to help support and guide me. And, just someone that I can just maybe bounce off ideas off of, or just if I need to vent, and just to kind of support me, because that first year was really tough in LA.
Necessarily know if this is different than other educators, but I know for me specifically, I am the only Black educator on my campus, and it can be very difficult day in and day out just being the only one and trying to find commonality between coworkers as well as dealing with society and social justice issues within that type of environment. When you feel like you're by yourself, it can get very lonesome. And so I think that is a struggle that I often deal with and try to overcome and find the light at the end of the tunnel.
I had to kind of walk that line, like not be, I don't want to say too Black, but not be offended, easily offended by things that I have the right to be offended by. When other educators of different ethnicities or administrators say things that are not appropriate to our students or to staff. And I kind of felt like I had to kind of like walk that line, and I don't want to go too far to the left or too far to the right. And I felt like I couldn't be my authentic self.
As a Black educator, I think it's very valuable and important that more resources, funding, and safe spaces are offered to Black educators.
Acknowledging one anti-Blackness that may be triggering or a catapult for educators leaving the classroom or leaving the field altogether. After acknowledgement, I would really like to see more emphasis on providing a track for Black educators to progress within the education field through administration and even district level.
Thank you, everyone. The stories we just heard are a glimpse of the barriers that exist in our schools across the state for Black educators. And today, on the first day of Black History Month, it is important for these stories and the stories of Black leaders, past and present, to carry us into the change we would like to see. So our survey revealed data that both practitioners and activists have been aware of, and also some new data that reveals how we are missing the mark for Black educators across the state. I would like to welcome and invite Jenny Perla from Poder Consulting, who partnered with our Black educators in creating our survey, analyzing our findings, and ushering us into creating the report. Thank you, Jenny.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy Black History Month. My name is Jenny Perla, and I'm a partner and consultant with Poder Consulting Group. Poder Consulting Group connects people and empowers communities by providing community engagement, research and evaluation, and capacity building services. I am so excited to share the findings from the Black Educator Advocates Network's first annual California Black Educator Survey. Jaleesa and I met organizing families in Los Angeles around education equity issues, and I have always been I've always admired Jaleesa's innovation and vision in pairing research and organizing in powerful ways. So congratulations to you, Jaleesa, and Bean on this very important survey that provides critical insights into what Black educators need to thrive and stay in the profession. Let me pull up my slides, 1 second. Okay. Second. Okay, let me do this. Okay, let me dive in. So in fall of 2023, Poder worked closely with Bean to design and conduct 128 surveys with current and former Black educators. The purpose of the survey was to, one, understand Black educators' views and experiences of their workplace and school culture, and two, learn what it would take to create an environment that is affirming of Black educators and students' humanity, values, and needs. I'm going to share a little bit about our methodology. So to design the survey, we started off with a literature scan of research about how to create welcoming and affirming professional and school cultures for Black educators and educators of color. The survey includes demographic questions, questions about Black educators' experiences and views on school culture, and questions asking directly for educators' recommendations on how to create affirming school cultures. We used SurveyMonkey to develop and disseminate the survey, and we recruited participants through email, text, and social media. Through a social media ad campaign on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, we targeted teachers or anyone working in the education field in the largest regions of California, including Los Angeles, the Bay Area, Sacramento, Riverside, and San Bernardino. To take the survey, participants were required to identify as Black or African American and as working as a current or former teacher. All surveys were completely anonymous. And again, a total of 128 responded to our survey. Now I will share a few demographics of our survey. So most respondents are between the ages of 35 to 60 years old. We asked respondents for their zip code. Only 56 responded out of the 128 to the zip code question, but about half work in Los Angeles, 44% in the Bay Area, 2% in Riverside, and 2% in Bakersfield. 8 in 10 respondents are women. Most are experienced teachers, with 19% reporting 10 to 15 years as a teacher, and 37% reporting working 16 years or more as a teacher. 7 in 10 respondents are current teachers, and nearly half said they plan to continue teaching for 10 plus years. More than half of the Black educators we surveyed said they have a school leader who is Black or African American. This is important to take note of because this is likely an overrepresentation compared to school leadership across California. But at most schools, 58% said Black or African American teachers make up less than 15% of all teachers. Now I will present key findings from questions we asked Black educators about their experiences and perspectives on workplace and school culture. So first finding, Black teachers we surveyed shoulder additional responsibilities due to their race. Black teachers we surveyed said these responsibilities include educating others about racism, serving as liaisons to families of color, and disciplining students of color. This chart shows the percentage of respondents that strongly agree or agree with each statement. For example, 53% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that because of their race, they are expected to educate others about racism. In open-ended responses, educators also shared that they lead professional development sessions, teach classes on African American identity, and address racism in various ways at their schools. Schools are working towards an anti-racist culture, but must implement policies and protocols to actualize that commitment. Nearly half of the Black educators we surveyed reported that their school demonstrates a commitment to building an anti-racist school culture. 45% reported that their school values the expertise of educators of color and supports their professional development. However, only 21% reported that their schools have thoughtfully implemented protocols, procedures, and programs that encourage Black educators to thrive and support students to excel. Schools lack groups, spaces, and resources specifically for Black educators. The large majority of respondents, 68%, reported that their school did not provide groups, spaces, or resources specifically for Black educators to feel seen and heard. Respondents shared that they face challenges in expressing their cultural identity, ranging from discomfort from colleagues' comments due to a lack of support in addressing racism within their schools. Some mentioned feeling isolated or encountering resistance when discussing anti-Blackness or organizing cultural events. We asked Black educators directly what would be most impactful for them. So I will share a few responses from those questions now. Black educators said the top 3 most impactful ways to create a welcoming and affirming school culture were 1, hiring more Black educators, 2, having a school leader committed to creating a culturally affirming and inclusive environment, and 3, creating affinity groups for Black educators, staff, and students. 54% also named mandatory professional development for all staff as impactful. Black educators reported the top 3 ways to support their professional growth and development as the following. 1, fostering a culturally affirming work environment. 2, providing mentorship. And 3, increasing Black educators' say and voice in school policies and decisions. 53% also named pathways to leadership as critical, and 51% said more time for collaboration with other teachers was important for their professional growth. So that was a summary of key findings from our survey. So now I will pass it over to Jaleesa, who will kick us off for our panel discussion.
Yes, thank you, Jenny, for supporting us through this process and walking us through our findings. We know that we're not alone in our commitment to addressing these barriers. So we invited some of our partners to participate in a panel to debrief these findings. To moderate our panel, we're going to have Lisa Ross, a Being member, a former principal, and founder of Sage Pathways. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Jalissa. I would like to introduce our esteemed panel of leaders and partners of the Black Educator Advocates Network. Dr. Myra A. Lara, Director of Southern California Partnerships and Engagement at the Education Trust West. Dr. Peter Watts, co-founder of the Watts of Power Foundation. Dr. Laura McGowan Robinson, founder and CEO of Diversity in Leadership. Thank you all for agreeing to participate in this panel discussion. I will ask the questions and anyone can respond. Please keep your responses under 2 minutes. I'm going to jump right into the first question. Can you share your initial thoughts on the findings surfaced in this report?
I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Peter Watts, as Lisa said, but in regards to the question, I think the findings, unfortunately for me, were not surprising to me as a former teacher in the public school system here in Los Angeles and currently working with Black men who are either currently teaching and or on the pathway to becoming a teacher. I think they are the experience that many of our young men in our program have shared with me in our fellowship and residency program. And then I think about my own experience in being a student in the K-12 system, a young Black boy who was, again, tracked for special ed or even overlooked for the gifts that I could have contributed to my school community and how that spilled over even into my professional career as a Black educator. So it's no wonder again, when we look and see that there's a shortage of Black educators, and we're seeing them leave the profession. And I think one of the things I was really surprised by were the comments around Black leaders as principals and administrators who the teachers felt like were, some of them were essentially part of the problem as well. And so I would have loved to dig into that more to see where that disconnect is for administrators and leaders, and find out what kind of things that they're experiencing, which actually leads them to behave in certain ways that are not conducive to safe and affirming environments for our Black teachers.
Thank you.
Happy to respond next. And I do want to dig into some of those wonderings you had, Dr. Watts, around some of the Black administrators perpetuating some of these inequities that we continue to see. I definitely have a point of view on that. I'll start. Hello, everyone. Dr. Laura McGowan Robinson has been shared, and I have the privilege of leading Diversity and Leadership Institute. And in response to the question, much like Dr. Watts, sadly, I wasn't surprised by the data that were shared. One thing that was confirmed and continues to be confirmed as studies come out, because there is no shortage of data that continues to confirm exactly what we saw in this report, that the struggle for systems to move from intention to action continues to be real. And anti-Blackness is pervasive and continues to be ignored. And this is also as a field, I believe that we need to continue to collect the data, but challenge ourselves to move to make these learnings actionable. I noted that over half of the respondents said that there should be a mandatory PD on implicit bias and how to create culturally affirming environments. And that should absolutely be happening. But this is often the first and only step that we see in systems. When folks leave that training, in many cases, that's the last time they hear about anti-Blackness. That's the last time they hear about anything about culturally responsive or culturally affirming environment. It just becomes a term that people throw around, and it's a one and done. And so often when folks solicit support from Diversity and Leadership Institute, they want a one and done. And often my answer is no. It is, what are you going to do with the workshop that is provided? How is this going to be implemented into a long-term plan? So I really think that there must be a comprehensive approach to creating environments that Black educators can thrive in, because we would never just teach a lesson and then move on. We always have, there's something that has been created, or there was an uprising or a movement to determine something needed to be taught. There was a need established. Then there was a policy around that need. Then there was a plan to implement it. And then there were assessments put in place to monitor growth. So why wouldn't we treat supporting rooting out anti-Blackness and creating more culturally affirming environments? Why would we treat that as a one and done? So that's something that really stuck out to me. There is a need, and then there's also a need to ensure that we have deep and wide implementation as it relates to some of the issues that were brought up in the study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would like to echo some of what Dr. Watts and Dr. McGowan Robinson mentioned. Again, Dr. Mayra Lara, I'm with the Education Trust West, and also was not surprised by the results of the survey. And wanted to share that this is something that we've heard at Trust West throughout the years. In 2016, we published a report titled Through Our Eyes, Perspectives and Reflections from Black Educators, where we conducted focus groups. So it's a little bit different, right? We spoke to educators across the state. And so some of the findings from this survey that we're talking about today were echoed in our report, or rather, they echo some of what we found in our report. What's really interesting also is to Dr. McGowan Robinson's comment just now, when we worked on a report alongside Teach Plus, in 2019, there was a particular principle that stood out where he instituted these cultural proficiency seminars. And they were mandatory and they occurred weekly and they were 45-minute sessions. And this was a space for teachers to really have candid conversations about race, about bias at their school, not just at this abstract idea, but what is actually happening at their school, and have the actual space to work through some of the discomfort and have the space to do so in an environment that it's safe, that it's constant, and that it's that is really part of the fabric of the school system. So, you know, it's to both what Dr. Watts and Dr. McGowan Robinson mentioned, it's both important to talk about what is it that the survey findings are saying, and discuss, well, what are some of the solutions that are sustainable, that will be part of the fabric of a school system and not just things that happen in the abstract or happen once and are not continuous. So that's, you know, that's just part of what has stood out to me, both in the report and then as part of this conversation.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, all very great points. Based on your organization's commitment to strengthening the Black Educator Pipeline, can you identify the barrier or barriers or policies that are impeding your efforts?
You know, data, to be honest, is one of the issues. Let's be clear, the California Department of Education needs to annually publish educator demographic and experience data. It has failed to do so for the past 4 years. The last time we had those data, I believe, were 2018, 2019. And so without these data, and this is just a starting point, right? Without these data, families, communities, and decision makers really are in the dark when it comes to the diversity of the educator workforce. And it's a critical first step to really understanding, one, what the problem is, and then be able to address it. And so these data must be published. They must be made publicly available, and must be done so on an annual basis. And again, this is just a first step. And then school district leaders, school site leaders can use local data to set clear and ambitious goals for increasing diversity. And we're just talking about increasing the numbers, right? This is just one piece of the problem. Just try to really understand what it looks like to be able to work towards solving it.
Totally agree with your points, Dr. Latta, about ensuring that demographic data is made public. I would add on a broader level, what we're seeing across the national landscape, and there are pockets in California where we're seeing just an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and conversations around it. Increasing attacks and policies to undo a lot of the work that has been done. So if I could just say it in a sentence, there is an increasing lack of courage to focus on equity, specifically racial equity, when it comes to addressing longstanding inequitable outcomes for Black students and Black people more broadly, and also anything around people of color, but specifically anti-Blackness. And I would say that this is not the time to cower down, because I think that also there's an over application of what people of the SCOTUS decision. And I think people are putting things in place that are not law, but they are afraid. And because they are afraid, they are oversubscribing that decision. And it's time to be strategically disruptive, to demand the outcomes our students and families deserve. And this includes ensuring that Black educators who are culturally responsive and are pouring into our children are supported, are affirmed, are provided the opportunities that they need to grow in their practice. And this also includes a commitment to educating the entire workforce. So it was also striking to me, but not surprising, that the Black educators on these sites are charged with educating the entire community about the issues that they face, and then putting themselves in harm's way, because they can be placed in harm's way by having to deliver and then receive what comes back, whether it's well received, great, but sometimes it's not. And then they have to receive that blowback and then go back into the classroom to do their work. So I agree that the training definitely needs to happen, and it should not be something that folks can opt out of. It also includes a commitment to engaging the workforce on why it is important to root out anti-Blackness, because I don't know if folks really understand what anti-Blackness means. Again, sometimes we throw terms out and people, it can lose its meaning. So really educating people on what that means, and racism, and building a new paradigm. So what does it look like to build a system that is affirming of Black educators and all educators of color? And we must be specific about how educators and the school and community can be actively engaged in the process, and provide consistent resources to ensure that this new paradigm is embedded into the culture and climate of our schools. I think we're seeing that with the unraveling of these DEI positions, when it was one person charged to support hundreds of people, and all you need to do is now remove that one position and all of that work is gone. So there needs to be systems built around these issues to ensure that they, again, are deeply rooted and can be sustained over time. And again, I always say this, it's taken hundreds of years to build the system that we have that's doing what it's currently doing, and it's going to take more than 3 to 5 years to fix it. This is a long-term generational commitment to dismantle and create something new.
So good. What Dr. Lauder said and what Dr. McGowan has said, she's talked about data in the very beginning. Dr. Lauder talked about data, and we know the demographic that I work with are specifically Black men, and everybody knows the data around Black male educators being 2% of the teaching profession in public schools. And we also know that there are positive outcomes for students of color, and in particular Black male students, when they have a Black male educator in grades 3 through 5. We know that college entrance increases and dropout rates decrease. And so we know we need more Black male educators. And so when I think about barriers and policies to strengthen the Black educator pipeline, I think about the young men that we work with and the challenges around even the credentialing process. We have a whole matrix that we have that we walk our young men through in terms of everything that they need before they even get into the classroom. So whether it's DOJs and fingerprinting or CBES or subject matter waivers or CPR or 20 to 40 hours of online onboarding with the district, or it's like all of these things that they have to go through in order to become a teacher. And then that's not even speaking about some of the things that need to be removed in that process. When I think about something as simple as a lot of times you'll have a young man who comes and they may have something on their record, something that's a small misdemeanor, something that's inconsequential around being able to work with kids and in schools. And then that becomes another challenge, because you have a great potential future educator who can't even get started. And so it's some of these things that we have been wrestling with that are preventing a lot of young men from coming into the profession. And it's confusing. There's a whole bunch of hurdles that you have to jump through to get your credential, to get in school, or to even get hired by a school district. We have a partnership in our program with LAUSD, and even in my own kids who are educators within the LAUSD school system, how it took like 4 to 6 months to get processed. And they were saying, I might as well just go and do something else. So it's just some of the even policies around the hiring process that needs to be changed and dealt with. And then lastly, I would say we have a residency program. And we know that those residency dollars are going to be going away in the next 3 to 4 years. And so they're going to be expecting people to start doing student teaching for free. Now, being a student of color, being a Black student, and going to get you just don't have the luxury or the privilege to work for free. So then the only other option is to become a university intern. Well, becoming a university intern means you're the teacher of record. So now you are getting paid because you need to, but you're now trying to learn the teaching profession at the same time. And guess who it impacts the most? The students that you're in front of, because they always get the first year inexperienced educator who's trying to go to school, figure out what it means to be a teacher, figure out the classroom management, figure out how to do lesson planning, and then dealing with all of the anti-Blackness on that campus. And so there are a lot of things that, a lot of barriers, I would say, in the Black educator pipeline around recruitment, but then not just in recruiting, in actually keeping our Black educators in the profession.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question, over 68% of Black educators reported not having a safe or affinity space at their schools. What steps or recommendations do you have for school leaders and district staff to address the need? 2 minutes, please.
I think I haven't gone first, so I'll take this one first. As an organization that really focuses on leadership, I think that in order for this to happen, it starts with a commitment to getting at the root of the issue at a systemic level and at the school level. So what are the conditions of the school that lead an educator to feeling unsafe? Has the school engaged in an equity audit? So these are questions that I would have for systems leaders and school site leaders. When educators leave, are exit interviews conducted to find out why they're leaving? And for those educators who are staying, why are they staying? Have those educators been surveyed and asked? And in any work culture, good or bad, it begins with the leadership. So it's critical that the leaders, and this goes back to what Dr. Watts was talking about earlier, know who they are as individuals, as humans, and they know their why. And it's also important that they've done the work of critical self-reflection. And this is something that we engage in our Aspiring Leaders, Principal Leaders of Color Fellowship. And what have been the experiences in their lives in relationship with their schools that inform how they lead? Have those experiences been negative or positive? Because those will pour out as you lead. And this is something that we focus on first at DLI. As a leader, who are you as a person? And what decision or what has informed how you lead? What experiences, what situations have you been in? And if leaders are unaware of how they show up, and how this impacts those around them, they may very well, if they are a leader of color, if they're a Black leader, perpetuate the very same systems of inequity they profess to try to eradicate. So that is hard work. And once leaders know who they are, they started their healing journey, they can begin to clearly identify what their strengths are and what their areas for growth are. And they can begin to collaborate with the teachers, the parents, the students, and the community to build a school that is more responsive to the needs of their students. So they have to start by turning the mirror on themselves and then being open to hear what the community, what the parents, what the teachers indeed want, so that they can begin the process of having these affinity spaces. Because if we're just dropping affinity spaces and folks aren't leading with purpose, then you can create more of a mess than you had before you had those groups. So really leading with intentionality is really important to make sure that some of these things are able to take root.
And I'll piggyback off of Laura. As she's working with leaders, we're working with the teachers that they are working with. And oftentimes, what we say when we're working with Black educators and creating and working with schools to create Black male affinity spaces in particular, or Black educator affinity spaces, we tell the leaders all the time, there's no way that we can work with your teachers in talking about care and trauma and professional development and creating safe spaces in their classrooms if the teachers themselves don't feel safe and affirmed by their leaders. And so it's by example that these things all trickle down. And what we also tell our educators is that our teachers is that your experience is not separate and apart from what your students are experiencing as well. So there's data that shows that what Black educators are experiencing as teachers on school campuses reflects the exact same things that students are experiencing in the classroom. So it's just this effect that's happening across the board from students to teachers to administrators and leaders. And so what we have to again understand and recognize is that it's in the system. It's baked, embedded in the system. We breathe it, we eat it, we're just all a part of it, whether you are Black or brown or white or whatever. Everybody's breathing that system or breathing the air of white supremacy. So I'm just going to name it. And in turn, and sometimes you can internalize a lot of that stuff and not know that you're perpetuating those same things that have been happening to you onto people who look just like you. So we create we create Black male affinity spaces in schools and with groups, and even in our own program to talk about care. What does care look like for students? What does care look like for yourself? And then professional development for our leaders.
Yeah, what I'll say or add to this part of the conversation is that it's important for school leaders to also, in addition to doing that self-reflection, to ask themselves who is in their network and to recognize that they can't lead in isolation. None of us can lead in isolation, regardless of where we are, positionally. And the importance of them also having a network of other school leaders, of other folks who can support them as they are building these systems, these sustainable systems in school. Because while school leaders must integrate both staff-centered and student-centered efforts to combat anti-Blackness, to combat hate, bigotry, racism, and all forms of bias in their school communities, they can't do it alone, and they cannot put the burden on the folks who are in their institutions to do that work alongside with them only, right? The work must come and must happen together with other leaders who they can use as thought partners, who they can learn from of what's working at their school communities. And so that's another piece that I think is really important for school leaders to really consider who is their network so that they are not, creating systems in isolation and are learning from each other to really build culturally affirming and anti-racist school communities.
Thank you. Great points. Next question. With 45% of Black educators reporting their school has identified the importance of an anti-racist culture, but only 21% report that their schools have taken action, what steps can school leaders take to show their commitment?
I'll go. I think Laura said it earlier, courage. It's just going to take courage. It's going to take school leaders to be intentional about being system disruptors, about changing the narrative around Black educators, about changing the narrative around Black children and education, and being brave and not being afraid of their career trajectory. Because at the end of the day, this is what it boils down to. I got a little piece of something now, and I got to pay my mortgage, so I don't want to rock the boat. So when we start holding on to all these, titles and material things, then we don't have the courage to disrupt the system for fear of losing something. And so until we are willing to be brave enough to lose something, whether it's reputation or position or whatever the case may be, then we're not going to see change. So I would say courage to disrupt the system as it currently behaves.
And if I can add to echo that around courage and to something that Dr. McGowan Robinson said earlier, is part of being courageous is recognizing what it is that the system needs, right? Dr. McGowan Robinson named equity audits, asking themselves, what is it that we haven't done yet that can help me in this journey to courage, right? At Trust West, we engage in systemic equity reviews. These are district-wide studies to really understand what a district looks like across school sites in their efforts to advance equity. And those data can be really powerful because they support leaders in being able to say, see what my students are saying, what my teachers are saying, what the data is saying are not wrong. It's being justified by this extensive study. And I'm going to use these data to be, to help advance, to make my point, to advance and to implement systems that are equity-centered and equity-focused. And that can be really, really powerful. So courage can look differently. Courage can be saying to your superintendent, hey, I think we need a systemic equity review because we haven't done this systemic, or we don't have a systemic understanding of what equity looks like across our systems. And that will help us get one step closer to changing the system and implementing systemic change throughout the district, and not just placing the burden on individual school sites, individual leaders, individual teachers, individual students, and individual communities.
Yes, 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 to all of the things my colleagues just shared. And if I could add just one piece, it would be soliciting the support of the community to provide cover to those leaders. And that is critical because to the points that were made, if it seems like that person is operating alone, then it's easier to attack that one person. But if that person has a support of the community, of parents, and of teachers, it makes it easier. I didn't say it would be easier. It makes it easier for that leader to move forward that agenda because it's not perceived as the agenda of the leader, but the leader is helping to carry out with community, with parents, with students, with teachers, right? To make all of this happen. And so it's going to take all of us. And I also have to name, it's not just going to take Black people. It's going to take all of us. It is going to require a multiracial coalition in order for these things to happen. Black folks didn't create this system, and it is not our sole responsibility to fix it. And so it's going to require all of us engaged for humanity's sake, right? To ensure that our kids have what they need and to ensure that our educators have what they need because they are the ones that are pouring into our children.
Wow, I'm sorry. I just have to say you guys are just preaching. I'm like, whoa, that was good word right there. Good word. All right. All right. So we know you guys have me so riled up I can't even think. I'm sorry. Oh, we know there have been many efforts and progress made to strengthen the Black educator pipeline. Can you share what efforts or policies your organization have supported or led and their impact?
I'm happy to share two. Oh, Laura, did you want to go? Go ahead. Okay. Two quick things that we're doing. I mentioned data earlier. We continue to advocate on the state's cradle to career data system, to longitudinal data system. We continue to push the state to connect data to educator preparation, enrollment, completion, teacher credentialing, hiring, assignments, retention. So all of those pieces. to be included in the state's Cradle to Career data system. And just another second thing, we are building a coalition, California Educator Diversity Action Network, or CEDN for short. We encourage everyone to look out for more information this spring if you're interested in getting involved in our policy work and doing more policy advocacy around this issue specifically. Look out this spring and we'll have more information.
I'll just share a couple of things, some of which my colleagues who are here are part of, that we've had an opportunity to champion alongside folks who are in our coalition and who support our coalition efforts. One thing that we're really proud of and that we're about to celebrate 2 years around is the Black Student Educator, the Black Student Excellence Resolution through Educator Diversity Preparation and Retention. That particular resolution was brought forward by LAUSD board member Tanya Ortiz Franklin 2 years ago. We're about to celebrate 2 years, and we will be commemorating that resolution by going to the board and sharing some of the testimony from Black educators. And I mentioned a multiracial coalition. And so folks who are all galvanized around this issue, who may not identify as Black, but see the need to ensure that we have a strong pipeline of educators, and talk about the work that's being done and has been done over the last 2 years with an eye on recruiting and supporting Black educators in LAUSD. Another thing that we had the privilege of successfully leading our first legislative budget play, which was $10 million investment called the Diverse Educator Leader Pipeline Initiative. And that RFA was just released for local education agencies, charters, and districts to apply to diversify their leadership pipelines. And they can get up to $30,000 per candidate who's interested in pursuing education administration. So those are a couple of things that we are excited about that we've moved forward over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and lastly, I will just say both of those pieces that Laura just talked about, we were a part of. And so that's, we are part of those coalitions. And before there was a Black student, the official Black Student Achievement Plan in Los Angeles, we were a part of the work around what's called the Validated Plan that's now embedded into the Black Student Achievement Plan in LAUSD that we were a part of with Innovate Public Schools and a couple of other organizations as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Jalissa.
Oh, Lisa, can I say one thing? For
Sure.
educators who are interested in supporting the work that and the commemoration of that LAUSD resolution, we invite you out to in February. I believe it's February 13th. If I get the date wrong, my team's going to be really mad at me. But we're inviting you to come out, make calls, give public comment if you are so inclined to participate in these efforts.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have a Q&A question that I wanted to ask, but I also wanted to send my gratitude to each of you all that are on this panel because I get the pleasure of working alongside of you all and grateful for you all to have the opportunity to voice your work, your commitments to this, to our team of educators along the way. So the question that we have is how would you sum up the state of Black educators now and what the future looks like to you? This was just a random Q&A question that I just wanted to give anyone the opportunity to share out loud because we have at least another 2 minutes that we could spare for this.
Dr. Watts, I was going to defer to you first, and then I could add my 2 cents, but
Well,
however you want to do it.
I'll do it. I would say, at least with the work that we're doing around Black male educators, the future looks bright. If we can continue to push policy around diversifying the teaching workforce and having those, again, as I said earlier, those grants that are available for residency programs to ensure that we can diversify the teaching workforce to bring in more Black men into the profession, and working with institutes of higher ed and local LEAs that will partner and do that work as well.
I agree. I think we are at a critical point, and we can go one way or we could go the other. And I think the conversations and the centering of these types of conversations has been critical in moving the ball forward. And so I think it's important that we keep having these conversations. I also think that it's important that we continue to push towards action, like the work that Dr. Watts is doing, to ensure that we actually have data, right? Of programs like this moving the needle. We need more data points like this to make sure that people continue to learn from it so that they can implement it in their own systems. But I also think if we lose this moment, right, if we don't have the resources to continue to drive, if we stop talking about it, we're going to continue to lose educators. We're going to continue to lose Black educators specifically. And so I think it's critical that we keep the momentum, we keep our foot on the gas, because we're at a point where we could go one way or the other. And so I just thank Bean for doing this survey to keep our foot on the pedal again of the gas. So thank you for that.
Echoing what has just been said, also looks bright. And, what this report highlights and what the conversation has highlighted is the importance of listening to Black educators and not burdening them with the responsibility of having to create the systems change work that is absolutely necessary. So yes, authentically listen to Black educators, authentically listen to the recommendations to improve working conditions, to improve the educational opportunities for students, and don't burden Black educators with the responsibility of having to make the change that is absolutely necessary to sustain them.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to add as well something that came up in our conversation in creating this report and looking at a lot of the open responses. Black educators specifically said that they feel like they were being pushed out of the state of California, specifically. And so when we look at the future of Black educators for the state, it can go either way, because what Black educators are feeling right now is that they're not welcomed. We're going to transition from the panel to recommendations and a call to action in our last couple of minutes. Thank you all for participating in the panel. I'm going to share in the back of in the report, you all see a page that actually gives recommendations, and there are 5 recommendations. And so what our team decided to do for this webinar is to actually provide you all with guiding questions. We understand that today's participants are grass top leaders. Some teachers are on this call during a break. We have some folks who are on this call that are school leaders and even district leaders. And so we wanted to create some guiding questions for you all to just think about, to journal about, and to think about what is your commitment to the 5 recommendations at the end of today's call. And so the first recommendation that is in the report is to hire more Black educators and staff. And there are hiring more Black educators and staff. Dr. Peter Watts is talking specifically about like why we need more Black male educators and has created a program to do so. But there's also importance of thinking about what is the environment that you're even inviting your Black educators to. So we created questions like, how are we intentionally recruiting Black educators? And what needs to be true about your school environment and practices to hire more Black educators? And specifically for district leaders, CMOs, and I would even throw in like decision makers, is how do you begin to assess the hurdles of recruiting Black educators and advocate for that in policy change? I'm sure that everyone who was on that panel and I can also agree that we need district leaders to join us and link arms with us in advocating for the policies that we need statewide, because we know that you all are navigating these hurdles firsthand. And so as you are reflecting and assessing on those hurdles, I mean, you've heard from at least 4 or 5 organizations that are committed to holding hands with you and advocating for that policy change. We can go to the next. The second recommendation is build an anti-racist, culturally responsive, and inclusive school environment. And so there is a lot around that recommendation. some school leaders or some districts may have some type of program where folks are do the training and walk away, like Dr. Laura McGowan Robinson shared earlier, or you actually have a school that lives and breathes this. But there still can be anti-Blackness that exists, even if you have a commitment to culturally responsive or a commitment to being anti-racist. And so these questions help assess where you are and where your school may be. So what is your school's definition of anti-racism? Culture responsive and inclusive school environment? How does anti-Blackness show up in your school, district, or CMO? How would your school staff and students rank their school environment? Because a lot of our educators have said that there's a disconnect between what their school is saying that they are and to what they are actually navigating. And then, of course, how can your district or CMO deepen their commitment to an anti-racist, culture responsive, and inclusive school environment? We can go to the next. The third is to create safe spaces for Black educators and students to come together. Dr. McGowan Robinson hit it on the head about Black educator affinity spaces. We have an educator on our team whose video couldn't fit in our original testimony, but she specifically describes how her BSU is being trolled. It's being targeted and it's being attacked. And so we want and we encourage school leaders to support their staff in actually creating affinity spaces for both Black educators and students. But we also want school leaders and district CMOs to really consider, how are you providing the support for these groups? How are you being critical when issues arise that these groups are bringing to you all, that they're actually being addressed in a way that isn't being overlooked? And provide and require culture responsive training for all staff. Recommendation number 4 is something that we are thinking deeply about as an organization of how can we further this accountability. We know that schools and districts have made a commitment of doing trainings, making sure that teachers have culturally responsive trainings, but we also know that it is not required in all of the districts or in all throughout CMOs. And so we have that question, and also how can your district or CMO deepen accountability for staff who create racist or toxic working environments? We had a lot of comments around in our survey of folks saying that my school has a commitment to this, but there are 2 staff members that I can identify that make this work environment toxic for me because of the color of my skin. Recognize, provide leadership opportunities, and include Black educator voices in decision-making is our 5th recommendation. And we ask questions like, what leadership opportunities outside of the classroom have been offered to Black educators? And how are all educator strengths considered in promotion? We had a Black educator also share in the survey that they have been in the profession for 25 plus years and have not been, and was just asked last year to be an instructional coach by their school leader. And this is a phenomenal Black educator who's been meeting the mark and exceeding it for her kids for 25 years. And so we really want school leaders and districts to think critically about what is stopping you from thinking that Black educators should assume these roles. So before we drop our call to action for today and what we're asking each of you all to do to commit, we want to share and be transparent what we are committing after we have completed and produced this report. We have a specific commitment to both recommendations 2 and 4 as an organization. For recommendation number 2, we are supporting school leaders, districts, and CMOs in creating culturally affirming schools, including their workforce. Like it was mentioned on the panel, we want to walk alongside school leaders, districts, and staff to think, what are the steps to build, and what are the steps or barriers that are stopping you from having that courageous effort to build these spaces? And then what support do you need, or what tools or resources do these schools need to be able to move past those barriers? We are creating a framework alongside Black educators and Black school leaders to do this work of supporting schools. And it actually releases in March. And so we are hoping to work with districts to give workshops and have a cohort of school leaders to be able to usher them through that process. And for recommendation number 4, we are an advocacy organization. And so our policy platform will be releasing this month for the next 2 years. But we have made a commitment specifically in LA County to think, how do we deepen the accountability around culturally responsive training so that there's accountability for the grievances that are arising with toxic workplace environments that are being created that are really grounded in anti-Blackness. And so we are looking to do a lot of advocacy and begin to hold districts accountable to these grievances that are coming up in the workplace. So that's how Bean is committed. Our call to action is, which recommendation or recommendations will your school, your district, or organization commit to supporting Black educators? In the chat, you will see a Google form that will drop in just a second. And yes, it's there. Thank you, Jenny. We are asking you all to share your commitments with us so that we can be in coalition together of supporting us all and tackling and strengthening the Black educator pipeline. So as we close out today, I hope that you all get an opportunity to complete the Google form and share with us what you're committing to and how we can support you. We thank everyone for joining our webinar today. I'm going to make sure that form is in there twice now. So you should be able to click on it, submit your responses, and we will close out. Thank you everyone for joining.